All right. Hey, folks. Welcome to Venusian Afternoons, number 2. It's March 12th. Sorry, it's March 11th. I was looking at, I was like, I had it in my head, 11. I don't know where 12 came from. It's Mercury and Pisces. I'm a little bit loose-lipped, I guess. I don't even know if that's
You're
like,
legally not required to know what day it is when Mercury is in Pisces.
thank you. Thank
That's the
you.
law.
We have a really fun group here today, all returning members of the podcast. Um, yeah, I'm going to introduce you guys. I'm trying to think if I should say anything else before introducing you guys, but I don't think I need to. It's Friday. I'm happy it's Friday. I'm happy to be with you three. So we have Sabrina Monarch here, who is a returning guest to the podcast. You haven't done an 11th house workshop, right? No, you did Fresh Voices. But yeah, returning to the podcast, super happy to have you back. Welcome. You came on for a couple episodes, right? We did an episode about the outer planets. Did we do another episode? Am I
We
imagining
did
that?
a chart reading episode together.
Yes.
And then I think we
yes.
did one more that was like with Bear and Diana.
Oh, the nodes.
Yeah.
That's right. I'm like, I know there's been a couple, but I've also been on your podcast a couple times. So it kind of gets blurry sometimes. But yeah, if you want to introduce yourself, say your SMR if you're cool with that, and a little bit about your practice, and also plug your podcast too.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. I am an Aries sun, Taurus moon, Pisces rising. I've been practicing evolutionary astrology for, I guess I started in like 2012 after having a big spiritual awakening and contextualizing it through that form of astrology. And I currently teach evolutionary astrology several times a year through an intensive, and I'm the host of Magic of the Spheres podcast, where I have conversations about astrology as well as other things around personal development and spirituality.
Awesome. Yeah, that I always forget. I mean, we're both Pisces rising, so we talk a lot about our, just different experiences when we're having similar transits. But that was reminding me that, like, yeah, you went through this thing in 2012, which happened to be the last time that the nodes were in Scorpio, and well, they shifted into Scorpio and Taurus that year, and we had eclipses there, which happens to be our 3rd and 9th houses. So it's really interesting that here we are, at the reversal of that time. And we're literally like professional astrologers now teaching this stuff again, 3rd house, 9th house. And it makes me curious about like what's next for you, if you're going to keep this up, if you have any pivots in mind, which we can totally talk about. But yeah, thanks for coming back on. Excited to have you
Thank
here.
you.
Ace, Alice Sparkly Cat. And if people don't know, like, Ace's name is Ace. And I always say, like, I always have a hard time like explaining that. Do you want to explain like what's preferred for you?
Oh yeah, my name is Ace. My title is Alice Berkeley. Just kidding.
Title, okay.
No.
I know, I like that.
It's another name I use, but my name is Ace. Yeah, it's
Cool.
good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Do you want to share your SMR and a little bit about your practice?
Sure. Yeah, I'm an Aries also, and then I'm a Cancer moon, and then I'm an Aquarius rising. Awesome. So a little bit about me. I do consultations, I do writing on my website, and then I write some books too. So a lot of writing. And then what I like to do with a lot of people is I like to make like the planets into fictional characters and get them to talk to each other, basically. So if you're interested in that, it's a storytelling session, which is the service I provide. We make your chart into a fictional story.
That's awesome. I love that. So third house. I just realized all three of you are like massive third house people. And all three of you are like amazing writers. I didn't even do that on purpose. So that's great. Yeah, Sabrina has third house Taurus moon. And Oscar, who was going to come on here, but they couldn't make it, also is a Pisces rising with the third house Taurus moon. And Ace, you have your third house Aries sun. Do you have Mercury there as well?
No, I have Mercury and Pisces.
Okay.
And then I have my Venus there.
Oh, okay, cool. So Sun and Venus in the third. And before I get to Ari, I'll just say, Ace, you came on the show, episode 3 of the first season to talk about the moon. And that one was a favorite for a lot of people as well, with Bear River. And so that was a great episode. And then you also came on to talk about BTS. Of course.
And it feels full circles too, because they're having a show right now.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Exciting. I still get comments on that episode and people are like, Kirah, who do you ship now? Like, and I'm like, I don't know yet. But yeah, welcome back and excited to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
And Ari, welcome back as well. Another third houser. Ari has, do you mind if I say your third house placements? Venus and Jupiter and Libra in the third house. And another one of my favorite astro writers. I say that a lot. And then I'm like, I guess like all of my friends are really good astrologer writers. Like that's just like who I'm friends with. But yeah, do you want to share your SMR and a little bit about your practice?
Yeah. Well, first, Sabrina, are you literally draped in velvet right now?
Yeah,
Oh my God.
it's like a velvet jumpsuit.
Oh my God.
What?
Magical. So Pisces right now.
Amazing. And then Ace, also before I forget, did you text me a storyboard?
Oh yeah, that was the storyboard
cool.
I made. Yeah.
Okay, I have to text you back. I just remembered it when you were talking about stories.
That's right. I think I got that text too.
Like, fuck, I didn't text back. All right, those are the.
Oh yeah, sometimes I mass text a bunch of people. So.
third house stuff.
All right. Those are the Mercury and Pisces prerequisites. My SMR is Scorpio, Pisces, and Leo. And right now I am in the middle of a huge pivot with my practice. I'm burning my site down. I'm like kind of stopping everything except my membership and doing some shape shifting, doing some world building. But I have been an astrologer, practicing astrologer for over a decade, and I will continue to be a practicing astrologer and a writer. And my focus primarily has been writing and counseling. And so I'm pivoting into offering other juicy things that I won't reveal here.
Amazing. I'm so excited about that. This eclipse cycle, I feel like is really shifting a lot of things for a lot of people, especially in regards to, our practices.
Yeah. I didn't even think about that. And it's like my 4th and 10th.
Yeah. Yeah. Leo risings, especially getting the North Node eclipses in the 10th. I'm like, definitely keeping an eye out for that. Because eclipses are around the corner. Like, I don't want to hype it up too much yet, but we're getting there.
We really are.
And what was I going to say? Oh yeah. You were on the very first episode of the Strology show.
So special.
We talked about why astrology with Bear River and Sam Reynolds. Great episode. I think I want to re-release that sometime soon. But also you came on recently. Did you come on season 2? I don't think so. Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah. So you came on recently to talk about water signs to represent Scorpio with me. for the water signs episode, and people loved that. So if you haven't heard it yet, definitely check it out. Yeah.
It was really good.
Yeah, I guess I know all of you. No, that's not true. I was going to say I know all of you through the internet, but that's not even true. I know you, Ari, through the internet, and we of course met in person, NORWAC last year. Doing it again this year, this time sharing an Airbnb. So excited about that.
Lots.
Yes. And then Sabrina, we met at NORWAC 2019 for the first time, through Aaron Shipley, another friend of the pod. And yeah, that's where we started our friendship, and it's been that way ever since. That was fun. I mean, again, everyone knows, everyone who listens to the podcast knows about how we feel about NORWAC 2019. I really want to make t-shirts. I really want to make t-shirts.
So fun.
It was a good time. And Ace, how did we meet?
I don't know. Yeah. But I know I met you in person, actually.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying. Like, how did we even meet? Because I feel like it was in person. I mean, I think, did I find Yellow Jackets Collective through you, or did?
Yeah. I think we met through Taylor, actually.
Yeah. I think that's true, because I remember the last time Ace was on the podcast, y'all were talking about it, and that was the conclusion arrived at.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, Scorpio, Stellium.
No, I remember Taylor and I met for the first time at one of Ace's book launches.
Oh.
In New York. And that was when we like met in person for the first time. I think Aaron had connected us. And so maybe it was something like that. Maybe I had just known about you online, and who knows?
I don't know.
I think that probably was something like that.
Yeah. I mean, I met Taylor because I used to live near their work.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a mystery. Yeah.
It is a mystery, but there's a lot of really sweet, ties and connections there that happen. I just love talking about, how we all know each other, because sometimes it's like surprising, it can be that way, but you guys all know each other through the internet, right? Yeah.
Oh, Ace and I actually met at the Queer Astrology conference in 2018.
Oh, cool.
And then we promptly kind of forgot about each other and like did our own thing. And then we re-met in 2020 when I did a pop-up emotional support group for radical astrologers. And then Sabrina and I had never actually spoken until she invited me onto Magic of the Spheres. Cool. But we know each other through the internet.
Yeah. Sabrina's podcast is another really lovely, if you somehow don't know about it, definitely check it out. Because if you like really deep, enriching, magical conversations between spiritually magical people, then Sabrina's podcast is definitely one to check out. Okay, let's get into the astro. Let's talk about this. I've been calling it messy, but not in a bad way. I just feel like it's a little bit like watercolory, like it's not very contained, the astro right now, but I'm digging it personally. It's Pisces season, right? And
it has
we
to
have
be
Jupiter
a little
here.
messy, so the Virgo moon has something to clean up.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, we have this Pisces season 2022 with Jupiter here. I'm curious, like, when we're going to get another one of these. Is it like 2032, 2033? I'm going to grab my
That sounds right.
Because like it makes me sad thinking about it that way, but it's true. Like it's also important to kind of hold that so we remember, like,
I so strongly agree with that, especially because everyone's like, watch out, Jupiter, Neptune, watch out, Pisces, watch out. And I'm like, yo, this is like literally Jupiter, Neptune is a once in a lifetime thing that's not happening again for 200 and something years.
Yeah.
And then this is like once every 12, 13 years, we get Jupiter and Pisces during Pisces season. And we've just had the shit beat out of us by Saturn.
Like Saturn
and Saturn signs, Jupiter and Saturn signs. Yeah, like can we just have fucking Jupiter and Pisces, for Christ's sake?
Right? The Kazemi was
Exactly.
really special.
It was.
Yeah, I super agree. Um, yeah, actually, Sabrina, I'm curious, like if you have any experience, if you want to share any of your experience about the Kazemi with it in your first two, because for me, I talked about it here, but it was very physical and like very like, I mean, again, I started this medication that made me go from like chronically dehydrated. I seriously like just didn't drink enough water. I just like wasn't thinking about it and I wasn't thirsty. And then going from that to like drinking 3 to 4 pitchers of water every day, like immediately, I took my first dose that morning, Saturday morning, and within like an hour or two, I was just like chugging water. Um, so for me, it was very like physical hydration, like Jupiter, my first, conjoining the ruler of my sixth house. So I'm curious how it was for you.
I felt like it was really faith renewing. The decan of Pisces that it's in, I think the image is like the invisible net, and it's the connection between the invisible and visible realms. And I had this conversation. I gave someone a reading in person, and afterwards we were just chatting, and I mentioned in passing, like I would, like I'm looking for love, like, because I always am if I'm not, in love. And she said that she had this realization one time that there's always a thread connecting us to everyone that we are meant to meet. And that you can see it back in time too, that there's been all of these synchronicities that led you to meet the people that, you know now. And something about her saying that just distilled that of, oh, like, I don't have to do anything. I don't have to seek anything. I can just live my life. And there were just a series of really fun events that happened from there. And I went to like a sound bath and saw this really cute dog and went up to the dog. And then someone came up to me and she was like, wait, I want to talk to you. I love you. I love your podcast. I was like, oh my God, and I was looking at her and she had in her like facial expressions, she just reminded me of like 10 people I knew. And I just felt this like cosmic sense of like connection to the universe, all during that Kazemi. And it was just unreal, like how much fun I was having that, series of days, like around that exact Kazemi, and like not able to even fall asleep until like 4 or 5 in the morning, which is unusual for me, honestly. And I just felt like I was kind of like overwhelmed with happiness, and it was a good time.
I love to hear that. Yeah, I definitely felt I just felt like I was buzzing, if you think about it, like your chart ruler in the heart of the sun, you're going to feel a little bit electrified or like heated up in some way. So I too, I'm still trying to get back to like normal sleep schedule, because it definitely affected me in that way too. And yeah, just good vibes. I spent it with 2 people I really love, and just had a fun day. It was raining, but it was fun. We actually, it was raining, and then we took this long walk right after it was raining, and it was just like this gorgeous sunset. And, watching the sunset, knowing that Jupiter was like, directly behind it. And everything was just like technicolor. Like it felt like we were tripping, even though we weren't, it was just like, everything was gorgeous. There was all these peacocks around. I live in an area with a lot of wild peacocks, so I get to like just hang out with peacocks and I walk around sometimes. And yeah, it was just a lovely day. How about you, Ace? How was the Kazemi for you?
Oh man, like it was like a period of time where I forgot everything. Like I had invited my friend to this party actually, that my visiting friend was gonna be at, and then I don't know how, but I just forgot about it, and I didn't see any text messages or anything. And I was gonna do this class, I forgot about it. Like I just forgot about everything, and then I ended up learning about like the Cold War lines in the Middle East. I read something. But yeah, I don't know what happened. I just forgot everything.
That's interesting. I had similar, I don't know if it was the Kazemi, but like a bunch of things on like certain calendars just like not syncing to my phone. So I was just like missing so many meetings. It's kind of similar, but not really. How about you, Ari? How was it for you?
Yeah, it was
Both
it was
you
really
and Ace
beautiful.
had it in dark houses. So
Yeah, it was definitely dark house vibes, but also similar to Pisces risings and I guess Sag risings. So it involved my chart ruler. And Jupiter's also my time lord right now. So it was my chart ruler and my time lord. And so yeah, it definitely was really immersive. And for me, Pisces, my 8th house. And I was actually texting. Was it the day after that you and I were texting? Or was it the same
probably.
day? I think it was the
I
day
don't
after.
know. We text every
And
day.
the moon was in Aries. Well, we were like, I remember because I was up super late and that wasn't usual for me.
Oh yeah, it must have been the next day. Yeah.
Yeah. So I had that experience too where I was like, I'm just awake, I have like this energy. But I kind of reconnected partially through conversation with you to like a desire that I kind of hidden away in my 8th house, so like the sun and Jupiter, like my moon's also there in Pisces. So, and it was conjunct my moon. Yeah. So it was just, I don't know, like even trying to describe it, like all these different threads start coming in because it like was so wrapped into so many different things for me. Yeah. And then it was about weekend. I had already started on the new moon in Pisces. I went and saw a chiropractor for the first time for my chronic back pain. And they were able to confirm that my back is like broke in 2 places. And so during the Kazemi, I was just like feeling the opening that starting to get that worked on was creating, and like feeling everything move through my body that's been lodged in there. So yeah, it was really beautiful. It was very, very underwater kind of like feeling where it's like hard to remember what I was even doing, like what happened. But it definitely wasn't, it didn't go by quietly, like it did clear so many things.
Yeah, the clearing. I think that's been a big part of it for me, just this Pisces energy. But especially as now the sun is there. And as we're speaking, the sun is meeting up with Neptune over this next day, which I definitely want to talk about. I also want to talk about Mercury being in Pisces now, just entered Pisces March 9th. And just the fact that we have now these 4 planets in Pisces, the sun, Jupiter, Neptune, and Mercury doing their thing. And then in complete aversion to 3 planets in Aquarius, Saturn, Mars, and Venus, and so they have their own thing going on. We have this like kind of party in Pisces, and this like, to me, it feels more like a business meeting or like a council meeting in Aquarius, where Saturn, for me, the way I've been kind of like conceptualizing this energy, Saturn's like, okay, like, I have a lot of plans. We have a lot of work to do here in Aquarius. I only have a year left, right? And anyone who comes through is sort of has to kind of abide by Saturn's rules or work for Saturn, while they're in Aquarius. It's like, you're going to come through my house, you're going to do some work, right? And so Saturn has all these clear plans for what it wants to do. But I feel like the combination of Saturn being at the bendings of the nodes and yeah, just like these planets coming through it. Oh, sorry. And hitting Uranus, kind of in this square with Uranus all year. Saturn kind of gets frustrated about the plans not going as smoothly as it might hope, maybe. But Mars and Venus coming through, it's like Aquarius is just so not Mars and Venus's vibe, right? Like these are these 2 nocturnal, feeling like deeply, I would say like physical and sensual planets who just kind of like went through this whole storyline together in Capricorn with the retrograde and, you know, the conjunction, the double conjunctions and all the things. And then just like, you know, got past Pluto and finally came together at 0 Aquarius. And I just feel like they're just like, we don't want to work right now, you know, like we don't want to work for you, Saturn. We're just trying to get through here so we can join the party in Pisces. And Saturn's just like, no, we have stuff to do. So that's kind of how I've been thinking about it. But I'm curious how you guys are thinking about this like combo of, you know, super Pisces and super Aquarius vibes we have going on. Anyone can take it.
I've been thinking about the quality of like Venus moving through Aquarius, and like you said, like waiting to get to the party in Pisces. Like I feel like there's maybe like a crunch moment that's coming up, and I've been conceptualizing it as like someone that's like taking a minute to warm up to a party before having fun, or like getting to know someone new and like having some awkwardness before like really settling in.
I feel that. I'm going to share my screen just so folks can see, you know, what we have going on right now here in the skies. But yeah, that sounds about right. I mean, I feel like now that Venus has surpassed Mars and is moving, you know, picking up speed, basically, it's like Venus is like, God, now I have to meet up with Saturn first and, you know, have this conversation. And not to mention Venus being besieged, right? Like it's just right now just moving between Saturn and Mars and Saturn. So that's another thing.
I just want to say too.
Say that again.
Ari, I said besiege me, daddy.
Ari gave a really amazing talk on Valentine's Day about relationship anarchy. And I feel like some of those codes like are really helpful for this Venus-Saturn conjunction that's coming up. Because Ari spoke of like a rigorous love ethic.
Yeah, do you want to speak on that?
I'm blushing. Thank you, Sabrina. Yeah, that is up in my shop, by the way. So I talked about the anarchy. I talked about the anarchy of loving yourself, and this, I like this, and you know, I'm a malefic person, so I like it. I like the tension. I like the opportunity for creativity. How I kind of see it is, like Sabrina said, very similar to what I was talking about in the anarchy of loving yourself, which is, you know, Aquarius is given this assignment by us about being oriented towards the collective, right? And being kind of like organizationally or paradigmatically focused. And I think that's true, but I think when personal planets, especially Venus and Mars, are going through there, you have to come back to what your central organizing principle is, you know, to do the organizing that Aquarius wants, that environment requires, especially when daddy's home, when Saturn is there. You know, you have to know what your central organizing principle is. And you get that from the sun. You get that from the opposition, right? Leo is ruled by the sun. So I see it as this interesting, like, emphasis on doing exactly that, like to decentralize hierarchical relationship, which is something that we could say happens in the environment of Aquarius. We do actually still need to have something else to centralize around. Like that's natural law. You know, there is not really any void space, you know, within this three-dimensional realm. Everything is like made of something and is like gravitating around something. And so that's how I see this moment. And I think I see Venus as being like, I'm going to move towards Mars. Or move towards Saturn. I'm going to have a conversation with Saturn first, because like, I know how to talk to Saturn, like really like Saturn is Venus's bitch. Where does Saturn insult? In a Venus ruled sign.
Yeah.
And so Venus is like trying to like hurry up and stay ahead of Mars and be like, let me go and have this talk first, so we can like create a beautiful container that you can then come and fill in with energy and with drive and with passion and with focus. And so that's how I'm thinking about that. Like, there are certain things that can only happen in certain conditions. And we talk about that a lot with malefics, but I think that's true even for enclosure, even for besiegement, where there's a certain amount of pressure that's being applied from which something that couldn't have emerged otherwise might be possible. And, that's how I think of relationship anarchy too, which is very Aquarius to me, but I have an Aquarius 7th house. And so with Saturn there, on the angle. And so relationship anarchy to me is about this. People often think that it means that, oh, I have to have like the same amount of intimacy with everyone now. And like, there is no like layers of protection or layers of priority. And that's not true. It's just that your central organizing principle is you and what feels right for you and what feels authentic to you, right? These very like Aquarius values, like what supports your freedom and your integrity, and then engaging with each relationship from that place. And so I think sometimes we aren't even willing to go there until there's enough pressure applied, where we have to choose ourselves or choose to continue to suffer in our relationships or suffer alone.
Whew, that's a word. Yeah, thank you for that. That was really beautiful. And I love the context of like how Aquarius is an environment that really can facilitate that type of thinking. And these two super relational planets, Mercury and Venus Venus and Mars moving through there, and really having to like, kind of shift focus into thinking about like, what to prioritize and what to kind of gravitate around. What's that? You said the phrase central organizing principle, which I think Saturn is also like concerned with, right? Like,
that's
we
my
creating
favorite
order
part about that opposition, between like the Sun and Saturn. Like, they both actually come down to a similar bottom line. And the last thing I'll say before I forget is that I don't know when we get we might get Venus again in Aquarius while Saturn's in Aquarius, but do we get Mars? No, right? Saturn's still in Aquarius?
No.
Mm-mm. Right. And so, just like the Jupiter Neptune, this is another thing that people are like, oh no, watch out. But I'm like, no, this is actually like, it'll be another 30 years, 28, 30, whatever, until we get Mars in Aquarius with Saturn supporting in Aquarius. And so I see that as an opportunity. I already forgot the other part of what I was going to say. So.
No, that's a really good point too. And since I have my ephemeris open, to go back to that point I was making before about Jupiter and Neptune in Pisces. This is our last one we get for like forever, but this is our last Jupiter transit through Pisces until 2034. So 12 years until our next Pisces season with Jupiter and Pisces. And I mean, I'm looking at it right now, and I'm just like, different skies. Then we're gonna have Saturn and Uranus in Cancer by then. It's gonna be a whole different type of mess. But yeah, so we can take advantage of that. Any other reflections? How about Mercury and Pisces? Because when that happened, when that shift occurred, it was very palpable for me personally. And Mercury, you might have heard me talk about this before, but has the past couple of years shown up and very much embodied for me as a person and people in general, with Mercury ruling my 7th house. And so typically when stuff happens with Mercury, it's like stuff's happening in my relationships, and it can be really palpable. So yeah, in this one instance, like I'm like watching Mercury shift into Pisces, and I'm like actually at my publisher's house talking to him about my book, and he's giving me, this is like the last couple of minutes, and he's like giving me deadlines, which is so like Mercury in Aquarius. I was thinking at the last couple of degrees of Aquarius, like getting all these like Saturnian deadlines and structure. And then like it enters Pisces, and we smoke weed, and, we stopped talking about that. But yeah, how about you guys? Have you had anything interesting happen? I know for like the morning after, woke up to multiple technical issues, both with the podcast and my app Cusp, happened right off the bat. So yeah, do you guys have any Mercury and Pisces reflections so far?
Definitely. Yeah. I feel like, because I had a house meeting with my roommates last night, and it was the first time that we've done that for a long time. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we're trying to negotiate some changes into the lease. So I mean, I've been feeling like that. I feel like with the Venus transit, I feel like, because like last year we had a morning star Venus also in the spring, but then the year before that it was an evening star. But I think like by now it was like in Pisces and then Taurus. So I feel like this is kind of like the first spring in a while where it's such a dry Venus. And then like I feel like people are just kind of like trying to make friends, and then we've changed so much in the last couple of years. No one knows how to do it, like what to do. No one knows what the rules are anymore. So then we're trying to like make up our own rules. Everyone has different rules. So I feel like the Mercury and Pisces kind of adds to that confusion, and then also creativity, because I feel like the confusion is really good, because that's when we learn, is when we're confused. So I feel like everyone's confused right now.
Wow. Yeah, I didn't really think about the fact that we haven't. Yeah, March 2020, we had Venus in Taurus. March 2021, we have Venus in Pisces. So we do have this very like dry, again, besieged Venus that's like not, yeah, it's like the connecting, the social stuff isn't as easy. And even not to say it was easy the past couple of years during the pandemic, but it was different. Like, I feel like, especially at the beginning of the pandemic, there was like a social boom in a lot of ways, right? Because then you're starting to connect with people you haven't talked to in forever, because everyone's online and at home. Last year, I don't even know. Last year, I'm like, I don't even, yeah, what happened? What was 2021? But similarly, I feel like, yeah, that's a really good point about Venus in Aquarius this year, and being kind of dry, extra dry, being besieged by malefics. And then we have this like super wet Pisces stuff that I think people are like, craving that connection, but maybe not knowing how to go about it. And it's just different. Things are different nowadays.
I think we don't have like consensus over the rules anymore. Because I think last time, like, I think like we're on the same page about being careful and what being careful meant. But I think, yeah, it's just so sporadic now. Sorry about my cat.
That's okay.
Your cat is a celebrity. They're allowed to do what they want.
All three of you have great cats.
That's the real reason you chose us.
Yes.
I want to hear what Sabrina has to say about Venus or Mercury, but what Ace just said reminded me of something that one of my members of the Temple Between Worlds just tweeted, which was, I won't say their name in case they don't want like a bunch of followers, but they tweeted, saying yes when you want to say no is the fastest way to dry ass pussy. And I think that's so Venus being besieged in Aquarius.
That is so spot on.
I really love that. That's been a huge like thing that I've been meditating on for the last few years around going at the pace of the body and like making relational decisions from a body place instead of a mental place, and like overriding body signals. And I think that can slow me down, but it's richer and like a better experience, which feels like that Venus and Saturn sign. Mercury in Pisces is my Mercury return. So I just noticed when it went into that sign that I wanted to talk a lot. And I had the experience too. I think that Mercury gets really flooded in Pisces, and there's a process of learning discernment and having that feeling of like maybe having like a negative script going, but then receiving positive feedback. And you're like, that script wasn't even real. Like there, you know, and yeah, I think the learning how to kind of like let the mind go or like dissolve certain streams, you know, like if something is bringing a sense of enchantment and beauty and like the high side of Pisces, great. But if there's a sense of feeling like really washed over with something that feels like more despair or like self-undoing, like just being mindful of like letting that kind of pass, if possible, I think can be really helpful with Mercury and Pisces.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, especially like the kind of like flooded or overloaded experience of Mercury and Pisces. At the same time, it could be, I think Mercury and Pisces can be experienced as like, yeah, kind of like over flooded with information, not having enough like boundaries around what you're perceiving and receiving. But at the same time, it could be this like super, it could be the like lubrication you need right now to like really get your imagination flowing or be able to kind of perceive things from a different perspective. What happens when, you know, you're looking at things from underwater, or, you know, from underneath or from behind a veil, or, you know, in a foggy space. I'm definitely like, I'm going to ride this next 2 weeks out with Mercury and Pisces and try to write as much as I can. I have deadlines, like I said. So I'm hoping that it allows the words to flow a little bit more than being kind of like a little rigid in Aquarius, I think, for me personally.
I had a really magical experience with Mercury when Mercury moved into Pisces, which is interesting because I guess I wasn't really expecting it. I don't have any like Mercury activation happening right now. But what was the experience? Oh yeah, I was like, I finished work and I was like, oh, let me read this book, Spell of the Sensuous by David Abram, which I've been reading. And it's like so Mercury and Pisces, like even Spell of the Sensuous, and like he's talking about animism and philosophy, but he's talking in the language of poetry, and it's just so beautiful. Like I have the whole thing fucking highlighted basically. But then I was like, Mercury like moved into Pisces while I was reading it, and I started like crying at so many different things randomly, which is not like me. And I'm just like sitting there, I was looking at my plants, and I was like, oh, started crying. And I was like looking at my cat, and I was like, oh, and I just like started crying at like every sensuous, beautiful thing around me. And I was like, wow, this is so. I love, you know, I think this particular experience, while Jupiter's home in Pisces, has been so beautiful to see every planet that enters the ocean of Pisces get like filtered so immediately through that environment, and to see Mercury, the intermediary, the messenger, the translator, like I think having Jupiter at home in Pisces is making Mercury in Pisces so much louder and stronger. And like, you know, there's still the chaos, there's still the confusion, there's still the like non-linearity, but I don't know, so far, you know, 2 days, 3 days into it, it feels like it's also like extraordinarily beautiful.
One thing I feel like is like maybe a little bit funny with the Pisces things going on is that last summer when Jupiter was in Pisces and then went back, like there was the cicadas, brood X, that woke up and just plagued the East Coast for a while. And there was millions of giant bugs everywhere. And then this year we might be getting the Jural spiders coming up north from Georgia. They're these 3-inch spiders that parachute with the wind with the webs, and then they'll just drop out of the air. So they're coming. Yeah.
I refuse this. This is fake news.
This is actually real. And then they might get as far north as Washington, D.C.
No.
They better not.
You're safe for now, Ari.
Yeah. Watch out.
It's not Jupiter, Neptune y'all need to worry about. It's these damn spiders.
Exactly.
And then and then Pisces seasons when the insects wake up. So yeah, I was like, wow, all these like large insects with the Jupiter.
Interesting. Damn. Okay. Yeah. What was I gonna say? Yeah, so we have this Mercury. This is what I'm excited about. So over the next week or so, starting Sunday, we have a bunch of like cute Pisces stuff happening. Maybe it's not cute, but for me, it's cute because I'm a Pisces rising. But Pisces Virgo stuff, right? Like we have some stuff happening in this axis. So the sun's going to conjunct Neptune at 22 Pisces on Sunday, the 13th. And we can talk a little bit about that right now. But we also have a Virgo full moon at 27 degrees of Virgo on Friday, the 18th. And then on Sunday, the 20th, we get both our spring equinox, Aries season, happy astrology day, but also Mercury is going to conjunct Jupiter at 18 degrees of Pisces. And I'm stoked for that. I'm really stoked. Mercury is my time lord. My natal Mercury is at 18. So I'm getting this like Mercury Jupiter conjunction, square my natal Mercury, square my, MC IC axis. And I'm just like, what's going to happen? I'll be in another country during it. So it'll be cool to see what happens. But yeah, I want to talk a little bit about the Sun Neptune conjunction, because folks won't be hearing this until right after it passes, but it's still worth it to talk about because it's like a trippy experience, right? Worth it to note 2 years ago during the Sun Neptune conjunction was right at the beginning of the panic of COVID. I remember it so clearly. It was just like all of a sudden the sun met up with Neptune and panic spread, just like not just across the country, but across the goddamn globe, right? It was just worldwide panic ensuing around this virus. And I remember it also coincided really closely with that, with the full moon too in Virgo.
I remember that,
yeah. So now that, it's 2 years later and hopefully we're not going to get more panic around something new. Not to say that there isn't enough to be upset about right now. But in general, I mean, like a Neptune Sun conjunction can be it's a really interesting time because you get the sun, which has so much to do with our like conscious perception of life and of reality, what we can actually like see and make sense of, coming to this planet that is like reality ? Like, what's that? Or like, I just think of Neptune as being this, it reminds me of actually, I'm not gonna, some TV show that I'm like, I'm not gonna spend my time thinking about how to describe that, but but yeah, I feel like Neptune has this way of of kind of rolling in and making us realize that like this is all an illusion, you know, like none of this is really real. Where the sun is like, what are you talking about? Like, I can see it with my eyes, you know, like I can see it, I can feel it, I can experience it. Neptune's like, you know, basically makes you question a lot of that. So curious if you guys have, thoughts or anything to add about the sun Neptune conjunction. Cause, it's a really interesting aspect, I think.
I have been thinking about this one. Something that has probably changed from the one that happened 2 years ago is that now the sun and Neptune, Neptune moved into the third decan of Pisces. I've been obsessed with the decans and tarot associations lately. And the third decan of Pisces is about the pursuit of ultimate happiness. And I feel like that's just so Piscean fairy tale, like wanting that kind of like happily ever after energy. But it's Mars in Pisces that rules that decan. And so I've been reflecting on just kind of like the blood, sweat, and tears relationship with happiness. And my kind of anticipation for the Sun Neptune conjunction is like, what if it is a reveal of how past hardship, like past blood, sweat, and tears, has gone into a kind of like, wow, like we're here, we made it kind of feeling? Or if there's that kind of sensation of seeing how something that's difficult now is on the path to that like rainbow that we see in the 10 of Cups. That's kind of my idealistic vision for it. But Pisces season and this whole like faith renewal process, I think there's something about like the healing potential of Neptune, the dissolving potential. And I think often like with Pisces, there's that sense of feeling like unmoored or like lost at sea until you kind of arrive at a shore and it all makes sense, like the whole journey that brought one there. So I think there might be some illumination of clarity around like a previous fog around the pursuit of happiness.
That's beautiful. Yeah, that's a really interesting, you know, kind of reframe around Neptune making the sun super foggy, where it's like the sun could be clarifying some things about what has been foggy. That's really interesting. Think of it that way. Do you have anything to add, Ace or Ari?
I've been kind of thinking about like just the recent inflation also with the Jupiter. Yeah, like I was talking to my friend and then they studied under this guy who studied oil for decades. And like, you know, Neptune rules oil. And one thing that the US does, I learned this, I don't know how it works exactly, but one thing that the US does every time there's inflation is that they do something internationally to try to control the price of oil or the limits on the amount of oil that can be drilled. And then there's the energy sanctions right now. I know that crypto's getting a lot of attention because of the because of the sanctions. There's a lot of Russians who are looking to crypto right now. And then there's that, like there's some regulations that have been recently put on crypto as well, which I mean it could get people to more seriously take it more seriously as a currency. So yeah, I don't know, I'm looking at the energy kind of thing going on.
Interesting. Yeah, you mean like sources of energy and stuff. The oil price thing, especially with Jupiter being in Pisces and thinking about inflation and just like gas and things just like blowing up in that way. That's really haven't thought about it that way, but that's a good point.
I love that because I feel like it's so analogous. Is that the word?
Sure.
Analogy, analogous, yes. To what Sun Neptune is on a personal or even relational or just third dimensional level, like outside of the mundane, which is inflation of the self. Can happen, with Sun Jupiter, but also with Sun Neptune, where there's just like dissolving of the boundary between the sun, between the like identity, so really just the awareness of self and the awareness of environment and all that there is, and that parallel between like mundane inflation and then like personal inflation, but also the way that the sun being kind of like, I see it as like being in the direct, kind of like this direct onslaught of like whatever Neptune has to offer is also, it also feels like, I don't know, like a deep bath in a way, like a deep wash, or like, kind of like when you're, okay, so I had this dream. The best way to explain this always happens when you start talking about Neptune, right?
Yeah.
Best way to explain this is a dream that I had recently where I was on a beach and it was like this weird, like it was daytime, but it was nighttime, like the sun was setting, but it was rising, like it was very like dusk, a liminal type of time. So there was no time on this planet or wherever I was. And I was in the water and the waves were coming, like the waves were huge, but I wasn't scared. And they were coming, and when they would come over me, you know how, I don't know if you know, but when you are like wave riding, you duck so that the top of the wave goes over you instead of hitting you and crashing you down. So I was doing that in the dream, but what was interesting is that when I would duck, the water would become really shallow all of a sudden. Like even though this big wave was coming, it would like come down into completely shallow water. So I was ducking, but there wasn't any like huge body of water over me. And so it was this really interesting play with dimension and like depth perception, and also the shape shifting of the water. And so the Sun Neptune makes me think of an opportunity to shapeshift. And instead of thinking like, oh, here's this big problem, or here's this big thing, or here's this, even this big experience of myself that I'm having or that I want to have, that seems like I could never possibly contain it or I could never possibly embody it, like using interdimensional travel or using just shifts in perception, which are the same thing, to close the distance between you and that vision. Or even like if it's something that is challenging, to bring that wave up as big as it can get, right? The way that it feels so overpowering, overwhelming, and then imagining it to just like, when it comes down gently, and it's the perfect exact height that you need it to be to survive it and to swim in it and to absorb it. So yeah, I don't know what the fuck nonsense just came out of my mouth, but that's what I think of with Sun Neptune. Is like, I'm one, I think as a malefic person, I'm very appreciative of experiences that take me out of the confines and the constrictions and constraints that I am accustomed to, and that encourage me to like think bigger, even when the dissolving is scary, even when the dissolving is challenging. And like Ace said, confusion is good. Until the dominant order is confused, a new order can't emerge. And so I think Sun Neptune is a beautiful time for time travel, for imagination, like embodying your imagination. I was talking about this yesterday for AFAN, I was talking about astrology for apocalypse. And, one of the most common things that come up with people that I've worked with over the years that they bring to a reading is that they can't actually imagine. They like have a kind of like a whisper of imagination of the life they want to live, or the person they want to be, or the world that they want to create, or what's possible for humanity, but they can't get themselves to actually be like, no, this imagination can be embodied. You know, they can't get themselves to Tim Burton it, you know, and like really make it into something real. And so that's what I think this can invite us into, is to use our fucking imaginations. Like everything that has ever been constructed outside of the realms of natural law has been an imagination. This laptop was an imagination. This microphone was an imagination. Like every single thing has been an imagination that we've constructed. And that's how we live in the constructs that we do right now. And that's how we live in the identities that we were given and the conditioning that we were given. And so if those constructs and those conditionings could be imagined and could be enforced, why not something else? But first you have to have that. You have to be willing to dissolve. And so I think Sun Neptune can be a big blessing. And then, you know, for everyone who's like, the lies and the deceits and the deception, you know, I'm like, if I've been saying this when it comes to that kind of stuff, it's like, if you haven't learned discernment yet, then it's too late for you already. This is going to be your chance to learn, you know, but bring your own nuance and discernment. Like, don't apply your own lack or like your perception of other people's lack of discernment onto a transit or onto a planetary ancestor. Like, that's not relevant to them.
That's facts.
Ari, all of that that touched me so deeply. That was inspired.
Hell yeah.
Praise Neptune.
Yeah. Everything that you just said. Yeah. I specifically loved what you said about just like how dissolving is necessary sometimes, and we just kind of have to let ourselves fall apart, you know. And I tend to talk about that when I talk about the 12th house, which I don't like typically associate with Neptune or anything, but in the sense that the rigidity of like a lot of our experiences over the past couple of years, especially, you know, I'll say the past 5 years with Saturn and, you know, Saturn ruled signs. And yeah, how, especially after the past 2 years of just a lot of difficulties for a lot of people, and in a global sense, right? Like we're all just so aware of global suffering and corruption and all the things, that, yeah, the ability to dream of a better world is so important. And the ability to kind of dissolve into this, like, it's not helplessness. It's not even like acceptance necessarily, but it's something else. I think like the type of Neptune dissolving that happens is, it's almost this like otherworldly sort of experience of like, yeah, I don't know. I don't want to call it acceptance because that doesn't feel right. It's like, it's this, again, like reminder that we are a part of a whole, I think.
Well, I think Neptune can be so much more accessible when we also spend time playing with neutrality. Like words like acceptance and surrender and, you know, those kinds of strategies for surviving things that are outside of your control or for interacting with reality. They aren't just transcendence and bliss and, you know, ephemeral like awakenings. They're also just neutrality. You know, to accept something is just to be like, it's happening. You know, that's real. And sometimes that's all you need to do for something to dissolve, because usually all that's dissolving is your awareness, like your attachment to a certain awareness or your resistance to a new awareness. But your resistance or your attachment or your acceptance are irrelevant to the fact that the reality is still happening, you know. But then we get into how Neptune is like the reality that there is no reality, you know, that's Saturn. And so I think that can be really disturbing. But, you know, this is Sun Neptune. And so back to that central organizing principle thing, you know, it's another great time to see, like in the mist, in the fog, and whatever comes up, what is it when everything is being washed out? and absolved and dissolved, that remains true for you.
Mm-hmm.
And like with that neutrality, where it doesn't have to be right or wrong, but what remains true.
This is reminding me, Caitlin Kopic just shared an article about magical pacifism. Maybe it was yesterday, but she shared this idea, or something, I guess, that I gleaned from reading it, was thinking about what we're kind of adding to the watercolor, to the soup of life. And if we're adding like further toxicity, or, the topic of like hexing, right? Like adding warfare to the space versus creating something that is healing. And I think if we're contemplating like Neptune and just feeling into that whole like spectrum of every emotion and every feeling state that's happening on the planet, from ecstasy to devastation, and then thinking about like what waveform are we contributing to in this completely multidimensional space.
Beautiful. I love that reflection. Yeah. Which waveform are we, which wavelength, waveform, same difference? I don't know. Which one are we contributing to? Because yeah, I mean, we're definitely experiencing the whole spectrum of that. And that's the thing about Neptune, I think, and I guess just about life and astrology, is that we get the spectrum of experience, and in that you kind of see that the ecstasy and the devastation are closer in I don't know, experience in a lot of ways than, or maybe not experience, but felt as similarly sometimes than you would think. Yeah.
I feel that way.
Oh, sorry. You go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, the concept of grief and praise, and how when things are so good, there's like even a tenderness to it, like because of the fear of loss, or that we grieve to the extent that we loved. So I can feel that like ecstasy, devastation connection of just like when we're touching an experience that's so good, it takes an opening, and that opening requires us to feel, and feeling requires that we feel everything, not just the special emotions that we want to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So true. So true. How about this Virgo full moon we have coming up? Any thoughts about that? I mean, yeah, I love a Virgo moon, whether it's in a person or by transit. There's something, I think, really, there's something really balancing about the full moon in Virgo, when compared to like, everything else we have going on in Pisces up until that point. And you mentioned it before, Ari, how it's sort of this, we have all this mess so that the moon can come in and see what to clean up. Does anyone have any reflections on the Virgo full moon? Or I'm going to pull it up. I'm going to pull up the chart for the full moon, actually. Let's see. When is it? Oh, yeah. The way that to find the lunation charts in Luna are kind of fun. It's kind of funky. Okay. Is this it? Yeah, Virgo full moon. Here we go. Interesting. We have, so the Venus Uranus square kind of takes place during that time, and then shortly after, Mars will come through and hit that square. So it's a really interesting full moon here, I think. Yeah. Do you guys have any thoughts about it? Just the fact that like the Jupiter Neptune is there. It's, not like the central focus necessarily, but this feels really, to me, it just feels balancing, which I guess full moons do.
It'll be an interesting play because the full moon itself is ruled by that Mercury in Pisces, co-present with Jupiter and Neptune and the sun. So I find that as you're saying, Virgo full moons can be like, scratch this this itch really satisfyingly that like is happening during Pisces season for many of us, where we're like, oh, we're like floating around, you know, and then like the Virgo moon comes and kind of grounds and anchors and provides strategies and provides tangible integrations. But this one, I feel like it's a plot twist full moon. That's the energy I get from it, where it's like, yeah, the full moon's going to come and do what it does in Virgo. It's going to come tidy some things up and give some, you know, lunar integration, some physical integration of this Pisces stellium. And also the Pisces stellium is still in charge, which, you know, makes me think of what we're talking about with Sun Neptune, but from a different angle, where it's like, you know, Sun Neptune is like, how are you going to embody, or what are you going to create from your access to the boundless, limitless possibility? You know, and like Sabrina was saying, that grief and joy. And also then the Virgo full moon comes along and it's like, what are you going to create in service to that, versus how sometimes I feel like the opposition can feel really stark during Pisces season with the Virgo full moon, where it's like, you know, the Virgo full moon wants to create order in service to Virgo, but this one is like, no, it's still in service to what's going on in Pisces. And I think, you know, that's true of the opposition in general, but like speaking to the specific texture on this day.
Yeah, I love that. It's making me think about how the Virgo Pisces axis, I feel, can have a lot to do with cleansing, you know, and hygiene. Yeah, like just like the Pisces part of this feels, it's giving me the imagery of like, just like a really nice sob, you know, and you're just like, oh, you feel cleansed from like crying or being at the spa for hours and just like, you know, being in steam rooms, or just that
Kirah's giving y'all the protocol for what you should do on this Virgo full moon.
Yeah, you know, just like really cleansing out. And maybe this is again Jupiter in my first, just like making me hyperhydrated. But that's the energy I'm getting from this Pisces season. It's very cleansing, but it's not necessarily like it's getting a lot out of you. It's moving the waters, you know, but the Virgo full moon kind of feels like it comes in and like, it's like, okay, now I'm going to actually like pick up all these tissues, right? Or like, now you can like actually scrub off all that gunk that just came out of your pores. You know, it's like the tidying up after the mess of release. That's kind of how I'm feeling about it. Yeah. And go ahead.
The Virgo Pisces axis speaks to me of materializing dreams. And I think that, you know, being a dreamer, I get the image of like a spool and thread and needle and like actually like weaving the dream into the physical reality. And that without that integration, the dream becomes a side channel that's, you know, so like having a daydream but not acting on it. And I think that the Virgo archetype can relate to crisis. And sometimes crisis is the result of neglect. Like there's been an impulse or something that's needed attending to. And if it gets avoided, it becomes more and more oceanic and more overwhelming. And so I think that a full moon can bring things to a head, and the sense of maybe that kind of like tidal wave of, okay, this thing I've needed to pay attention to. And that might be, you know, a larger theme, or it might just be something that's related to the month as a whole. But I think tracking Virgo moons, you know, throughout the year, I think they can reflect that sense of alignment versus neglect. And I think too, like even just for me, like keeping my apartment clean or like keeping a space clean, I'm not a naturally tidy person. Like people think I might be organized, but I'm not. And so whenever I do actually clean and develop a better habit and go through phases of being in a good habit with that, it's magical what it opens up. And I just find it interesting how there's that sense of not wanting to do it until it's actually done. And, you know, so figuring out, you know, some people are fine cleaning and they, you know, keep their space clean, but I think everyone has their avoidance tendencies. And within avoidance, I think that, you know, it's not just the thing, it's the portal that that thing represents. And so if we're avoiding having like a conversation or like having good communication and relationship, and that creates some kind of crisis, it's like tending to that which we'd rather not tend to can be spiritually opening, I think, during this full moon, and maybe also preventative. Not that, you know, I think full moons bring things to a head anyways, and it's okay if things come up like that, but just to offer that as like an invitation to lean into something that we otherwise neglect.
That's a really great point. And it's making me,
like
yeah,
that's what Virgo full moons always feel like to me, because it's like the way that you can work the material to work the energetic, and the way that they just intersect.
Wow, y'all are getting me really excited about this one, because this is like the first one in a while, a full, like the exact full moon that will be at night for me on the East Coast. The last, I think it was like 11 something, like I'm not asleep at 11.
They've been during the day. Yeah,
so I'm like, okay, like I'm gonna try to remember my dream for that night or something, because it's been a while since I've been asleep during the full moon. I think for people on the West Coast, like it's been just during the day. Yeah, even.
Yeah, I think this one's interesting again with that Mercury and Pisces rolling it too. Yeah, I don't know, this whole Pisces season, I'm just feeling like we all need to lean into the dream, which I find to not be easy. You know, I don't think this is like, it's just like, oh yeah, it's just daydream. Yeah, even more than that, it's like believing it. Like that's the hardest part. You know, I think a lot of us can be like, yeah, sure, I'll daydream. Like I'll, you know, dream up my favorite whatever or my ideal whatever. But like, yeah, getting yourself to believe that it's possible is like a whole nother thing. And I think the cynicism after the past couple of years and just the dryness that we've been experiencing and the instability. Yeah, the driest pussy, the instability with Uranus, the Uranus Saturn squares. It's just, it can be hard to believe the Jupiter part. And so, yeah, just to say that this whole season feels like almost like a crash course in belief and faith and letting ourselves just go there and trusting in whatever it is that you trust in to like carry us there.
It's moisturizing, you know, like we're so fucking ashy after these couple of years, and we need this moisturization, or we cannot continue, you know, like not to get all passionate about the fucking criticizing the like warning hype about Neptune and Pisces season, but like that's just natural law. We cannot continue in one state of being. We cannot continue in one, like in the stasis that we've achieved to a certain degree with Saturn. You know, Saturn's been doing its job, but it's been in drought and we need the rain. You know, and so maybe the Virgo full moon is the clear container, like the tangible thing you do, the mundane thing you do, the practical thing you do, the strategy you apply, that like all that water can go into so that you have some for later. We need this hydration for now. We also need to save it for later. You know, we're playing a long game here when it comes to I think when it comes to the water element, because it's just some, then Jupiter will be in Aries, and we have like Pluto and Capricorn, Uranus and Taurus, Saturn, and like it's been very anything but water for the slower moving planets.
Yeah, that's so true.
Speaking of people who believe in dreams, it's really funny that like Anna Delvey and like Simon Leviev are like so popular right now, because I think those were scams done when Jupiter was in like Sagittarius and Saturn was in Sagittarius kind of thing too. So it's like it kind of feels like we were in this like Jupiter period, and then we went into this long winter, and then we're like, whoa, what happened? And then we're trying to figure it out and figure out how to like believe in things again after the long winter.
Very much that. Yeah. And I just want to make a point. I just want to note about, again, this Mercury-Jupiter conjunction that we have on March 20th.
That's at 18? It's at 18. Be conjunct my moon.
Oh, yeah. My ascendant.
Bitch better have my money. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's my prediction.
Yeah, I hope so for you. But yeah, I just want to point that out for the mutables out there, especially the mutable risings, Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces risings, because this is, sorry, do we have someone who's unmuted? Because that's, yeah, I'm gonna mute you guys. Okay. So yeah, it's especially special, I think, for the mutable risings, because you get the rulers, the two planets that rule the angular houses, connecting. And I'm always hyping up Mercury, Jupiter aspects for mutable risings, but especially a conjunction, especially a dignified one for Jupiter. So really thinking about the fact that you kind of have these pillars of your life, the first house, seventh house, axis coming together, the fourth house, 10th house axis coming together, in one of these houses in an angular house for you. And I just think that some magical stuff can happen during that time. Some magical connections can happen. So
even though Mercury's in detriment, it's still ruled by that dignified Jupiter.
Exactly. Yeah. And I feel like this is really Mercury working for Jupiter, in a way that at least, it is in fall, but it does have resources there. Its ruler is there, abundant with resources. So it's Mercury having to, again, like paint with watercolors, and instead of like, InDesign or whatever, instead of having the precise tools that it might want. But yeah, I think it can produce something really, I'm just excited to see what happens for fellow mutable risings. And then of course we have our spring equinox as well. So do the Aries want to say anything about about the equinox or Aries season?
Oh, I just realized we're 2 Aries and 2 Scorpio.
Yeah.
I'm excited for it. I feel like it's like my energy just goes up in the spring because I was born this spring. It's kind of a spring period year-wise too. So I'm really excited for this spring.
Same.
I love celebrating the equinoxes and solstices. I've found that throughout my life, I even like accidentally am celebrating them. But now that I'm more aware of them, I just think it's a nice time to like gather outside, or just be in like festivities. I feel like it really sets the tone for like the whole season to do that. And if it's something small and intentional at home with a candle, prayer, anything. But yeah, I think that the beginning of Aries season is kind of like, we have our calendar new year during Capricorn season, which like people are making resolutions and talking about the long, you know, like it makes sense in that regard. But I feel like springtime really is the like, you know, baby chicks hatching out of eggs. And it's just like a really, there's something like precious about that burst of fresh life. And there really is that like the year is starting kind of energy in the spring. But I mean, I'm biased because I'm an Aries also.
No, I mean, I feel that maybe because I'm an Aries moon, but I definitely feel that during Aries season.
I was gonna say I feel that too, but it's just because I'm a Leo rising.
I was
like,
gonna
Leo
say,
risings
yeah,
love the sun in Aries. It's exalted.
Exactly.
It's in the house. It's rejoicing by transit. Yeah,
I was gonna say, yeah,
so
the
great.
Leo risings and those in solar perfections. If you know Leo is activated for you by perfection too, like Aries season can be really, really special. The sun entering the sign of its exaltation. And yeah, I think that's a big piece. That's a big part of that like burst of energy too. And vitality.
Like sun in Aries is gonna have this like hair dryer. This looks like a gun. I don't know how to do a hair dryer. Like a hair dryer, like start to like dry the wet hair off of like all these Pisces like transits we've had.
I always like to describe it as like, you know, it's like when you get off the beach, you get off of out of the water and you go lie down and just like dry off in the sun.
There's a new Killing Eve episode out that day on the Equinox. I bet that episode's gonna be good.
Not sponsored, but yeah. And the equinox, again, this is when we have equal day and equal night, right? So there's this really beautiful balancing that happens at the equinox points. And yeah, it's almost like this, there's a rebirth energy of like spring, but also this like centering and rebalancing energy as well as we move towards this new part of the year, as the sun, you know, as the days get longer and we get more sunshine. It's an exciting time. So I'm excited for it. I'm always excited for Aries season. I love an exalted sun, and I love Mercury and Aries too. I just think that's always a fun transit.
Mercury and Aries and Twitter, like Mercury and Aries is always the funniest time on Twitter. I swear to God. Like,
good to know. I'm going to keep an eye out.
Funny.
Yeah, people get really.
Oh, Twitter's an Aries.
Oh, Twitter's an Aries. Okay, that makes sense. I know that Twitter has Mercury and Pisces conjunct Uranus, which is just like spot on for Twitter, I think. But yeah, last thing I want to talk about are these Venus and Mars squares to Uranus. Because yeah, we had Saturn move through. We don't get another exact square with Saturn Uranus, but we pretty much do in October. They're both at 18 degrees. And yeah, now we have Venus and Mars moving through. So, and after we had Mercury station retrograde square Uranus and Aquarius. So we've been having these kind of hits. And yeah, curious if you guys have any thoughts about anything to share about, you know, what this might be like for folks. Cause I look at things so technically. So I'm just thinking, okay, whatever Venus represents, whatever Mars represents, kind of run into some sort of, you know, pivot or unexpected pivot point with these squares. But yeah, anything come to mind for you guys?
I love the like the new laws about how you have to make your page transparent when you post about openings. That's been going on. I think it started like Colorado or something, and then now New York is going to introduce it. So then when you apply for any kind of job, then you know the salary right off the bat. Employers can't really keep it private. And I know that that's something that a lot of people are pushing for as they go out to these interviews and stuff. Like, why don't you tell us the pay?
That does kind of reflect a lot of the ongoing, like, you know, these things with the labor movement that have been ongoing with this Saturn Uranus square happening between Aquarius and Taurus, and definitely see that kicking up a lot this summer when planets begin to move through Leo and Mars hits that that Uranus North Node conjunction in August. But yeah, thinking about Venus and Mars moving through as definitely like continuing that story, that makes a lot of sense.
Thinking about the just ongoing nature of the Saturn Uranus square, and I feel like it's been like shock and stabilization themes, and it's also a closing square. So there's like that last quarter kind of crisis in consciousness energy. And I find that when the inner planets activate that square, that it's kind of like a flashpoint where it brings up those kind of shock and stabilization themes in a more personal way. And the way that I've experienced them, you know, receiving like a shock that kind of gives me that like boost of like awakening, and then like, okay, now action, like especially with Mars Uranus, where there is some inspiration or impetus to ground like what has been like kundalini'd up, or like Prometheus Uranus, like bringing fire from the gods to the mortals, like having that illumination. And I think it just really quickens the pace of, say, like applying insight. But I think that also goes to say that like having tools for dealing with crisis or shock, I think can help with Uranus transits. Like, not to say that they're, you know, prepared to be shocked or something, but I think that having like tools, like I really like EFT, for example, to help me kind of like process when I get activated. And then I find that it goes from being just unpleasant to being like a soul retrieval process, or like like I'm becoming more formidable because I'm integrating something that used to be out of range. And so I like to think about Uranus transits as like, you know, outside of the actual time period, like developing certain adaptive like tools or skill sets so that when the Uranus transit comes, we're like prepared. Kind of reminds me of Ari's like apocalypse teachings, and just kind of like having that framework ready so that we can kind of like quickly adapt when we get jarred with a Uranus transit.
Yeah, there's something that comes to mind is like, it doesn't matter what tools you have if you don't use them. You know, specifically with Venus, Mars, and Aquarius, you know, I get that feeling where that environment, especially with Saturn there, is like, you know, this can be this acceleration. By this acceleration, I mean a creative tension with Uranus can be enormously productive. You know, like these Uranus squares and their activations have been big pivots, not just like literally, but energetically for me. And when the inner planets move through, there is more of an embodiment, like Sabrina was saying, and there is also like you know, it doesn't have to be so hard, you know, like the destabilization or the shock or the unexpected, if we do orient to understanding that God has changed, or the realities change, or change is the only constant, like whatever language you feel most comfortable hearing that in, is always happening anyway, you know. And when we have inner planets squaring Uranus, it's just bringing that realization closer to the forefront, like the change is more overt or acute, or the shift is more groundbreaking. And so we've been dealing with this, right? We had the last inner planets that squared Uranus or aspected Uranus and activated this Saturn-Uranus square, were the the Scorpio ones. and before that Leo, and before that Taurus. You know, we've like been in this cycle already since March 2020. And so I feel like with Venus and Mars specifically at this moment in time moving through, it's like, okay, what have you learned? It's time to apply it. You know, it's kind of like stop being surprised type of thing. And like start paying attention, and like Sabrina was saying, like start using your tools so that you can actually, and I never like to talk in terms of optimization, but so that you can actually optimize the acceleration that's available now, because we're kind of like used to it in a way, but we won't always be living under Saturn Uranus square, you know. And so when cracks reveal themselves, so do opportunities. And you know, going back to what Ace was saying about confusion being good. And so we will always have the opportunities we're having now. So I think Venus and Mars are going to be like, how do we continue to integrate what we've learned about change, what we've learned about structure, what we've learned about implementation, what we've learned about rejecting our conditioning or rejecting the hierarchy. How do we continue to integrate that to like actually change our material reality, like Ace was saying about the wage transparency? You know, like we need to start like actually implementing the conscious and the sociopolitical shifts that we've been having on a intellectual level.
Yes, that's so real. Especially with Venus and Mars being these more personal planets, it's like, okay, very much bring things back down to earth.
And it's sexy. Like that's so sexy, you know, like Venus and Mars together is just always sexy because it's sacral, it's creative.
Exactly. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what these squares bring up. Because I think for me, one of the major themes of this Saturn-Uranus square that I've been just seeing in people is this need, like this visceral felt need for change. And, but then the confusion and I think the apprehension around how to do it and what to do about it, you know? And I think that this Venus Mars moving through this square is definitely going to be poking people even more about, you know, the changes that they want to make, but are a little too apprehensive about. So
it's kinky, right? Like it's kinky. Venus Mars square Uranus, good time to have a kink party or like try a new kink thing. But if we really think about kink, we're reenacting, you know, or we're enacting something, or we're experimenting with something, regardless of how taboo or unconventional, or, you know, like none of those things belong in kink. That's the point of kink. And so that's what this makes me think of. It's like, what can you try? What can you experiment? What can you practice? And like, stop paying attention to like all these other voices, all these other standards, and just like do the thing. And kink is also a great place. You know, it's supposed to be play, right? It's supposed to be where you get to have an experience without the experience being definitive. And that's the kind of like energy that I feel with these squares specifically.
That's so funny because I was actually writing in my journal, like I want more kink in my
Ace. I knew you were. That's why
in my friendships, like not sexual at all, just like platonic kink, where it's like I tried this with my friend at the beginning of the pandemic, but I forgot about it, where I was supposed to dom them through text message. So then they would, I don't know, get their homework done. But you know, it's so fun to like do it with your friends. I feel like that's why people write fan fiction, things like that. But it doesn't even need to be sexual because you're just acting out like a power play.
It doesn't need to be sexual. It doesn't need to be romantic. Like when it's so Aquarius, right? Where it's like, fuck all the like, you know, boxes and like all that shit. Like the energy needs to be moved. Let's move it.
Yes.
And who wants to collaborate with that?
Yeah. So I am open to that.
Same. If anyone wants to dom me into writing my book, to these book deadlines, let me know.
I will.
Let's talk. Yeah, we're gonna get double domed now.
To start to kind of wrap this up, I mean, does anyone have any sort of like final words of advice for folks over the next 2 weeks, or just anything you want to leave people with to carry through, these next 2 weeks of Pisces season into Aries season?
I think the awkwardness is really key. Like, anytime I try to interact with anyone these days, I'm just like, oh, sorry. Like, it's just awkward.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I mean, just go with it. Like, everyone's feeling awkward. Like, just do it anyway.
Yeah, I love that.
So Aries.
I know, I was thinking Venus and Aries. I'm like, my Venus and Libra ass.
I know.
You cannot catch me. Right.
For me, I would say like lean into the feels. I feel like this Pisces energy, it's so kind of like what we were saying earlier, like you can feel so many different types of feels during it, and you kind of get this full range of experience of emotion, different from like a Scorpio season, where it's a little bit more, how do I put it? A little bit more like contained. I think that type of emotion is a little bit more
depth is not the same thing as range,
right?
So you
exactly.
can be deep in something, but it's still contained, whereas Pisces is like
it's like all over the place. And I think lean into that. Let yourself be emo when you're feeling emo. Let yourself be like cringe when you're feeling cringe, just like I'm currently leaning into that simp life, simping my way through the rest of Pisces season. And I'm leaning into it because why not, horniness. I think that Jupiter and Pisces are for sure the horniest. Pisces placements are the horniest.
Corny at first.
Oh no, not corny. That goes to Taurus placements, but
it does.
Pisces placements. Pisces placements horniest. And just like the fertile nature of this Pisces season, and it doesn't mean you have to be horny for sex, but
Kirah's advice
horny
is
for someone
get
else.
Wet.
Get wet.
I'm not as horny this year as last March's.
I think last March we had, or maybe that wasn't that. I'm thinking of April 2020 when we had that Venus Mars edgings scenario.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I think that, I think that's my advice. It's just like kind of lean into like this wet, messy sloppiness. Because I think there's a lot of magic in that, and there's a lot of gold and mess. And, we get the Virgo full moon to kind of clean it up. So don't be afraid to kind of get your hands dirty or other things.
Other appendages as well.
I feel like Pisces feels like this personal, like reality TV show energy of just like feeling like the phenomenology of the drama of like that's encompassing one's life. And then Aries is so like piercing through that of like I am and like choosing the narrative. So I feel like there's this dreamy side of Pisces season of like feeling how magical we are, how magical life is. And then in Aries, like making a choice or like acting from a place of decision. So I feel like there's a kind of like personal rebirth that can happen during this kind of Pisces Aries shift. I like to think too about, storytelling and narrative, keeping a journal, or like, if we're looking at our thoughts and looking at how we're conceptualizing things, like what kind of story are we telling, and do we like it? Is it enchanting? Do we like who we are in it? And playing with the mutability of Pisces to see our stories from different lenses. And then with Aries, like step into the embodiment of being the hero of our story. I feel like there's just that fun of Pisces, Aries, in terms of like personal cosmic creativity.
Love that. Beautiful. Ace, do you have any final thoughts? Did you already say yours?
I already did mine, actually.
Okay, yeah. Okay, cool. Ari?
Yeah. Don't take shit so seriously. Like
Yes.
that's what I feel over with Pisces season. I'm over taking myself seriously, other people taking themselves seriously, everybody taking everything seriously. Like
taking
enough...
you too seriously. It's like, stop taking me so seriously.
There's like enough to take seriously that's not actually being taken seriously, and nothing's been being done about. And so the rest of it, though, like, yeah, like I said earlier, we need this moisturization, we need this imagination, we need this rehydration, and we can't do that if we're so defensive, protective, boundaried up against water. So don't take shit so seriously. Like it's not actually the end of the world. The world has ended many times and been born again.
Mm-hmm. That's a beautiful note to end on. Thank you. Thank you, all three of you, for joining. And 11th Housers for joining live. Yeah. Let's let the people know where they can find you. Sabrina, do you want to let us know?
Yeah, I'm on YouTube, Sabrina Monarch. My podcast, Magic of the Spheres, is available where you listen to podcasts. Written versions of the forecast every week, monarchastrology.com. And then you can find me on Instagram at Sabrina Monarch and Twitter at Sabrina_Monarch.
Awesome. Ace?
My name is Ace, and then my handle is going to be Alice Sparkly Cat with a K. And then, yeah, you can find me on my website, alicesparklycat.com. And yeah, there's a lot of like just kind of writing there. You can check it out. You can come to my Wonder workshop on Sunday if you want. Though I think this is out after.
This comes out on Monday.
If you time travel, you can go to
exactly.
Or if you're here with us live, 11th Housers.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, hello. And I'm also on social media at Alice Sparkly Cat on both. It's all one word, no spaces.
Cool. Thanks, Ace. And Ari?
My website is saltwaterstars.com. And you can check out my shop. I have the Anarchy of Loving Yourself. I have Planets as Ancestors. I have End the Empire in Your Mind, all available for instant download. My books are closed, but you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Saltwater Stars.
Beautiful. Thanks again. Thanks again to 11th Housers for joining us live. And have a beautiful next 2 weeks. We'll see you with the next episode very soon. Thanks, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you.